Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parshas Noach, and I'd like to begin tonight to share from the beginning of the Parsha, Perek Vav, Pasuk Yud Gimel, chapter 6, verse 13. Vayemer Elokim leNoach, and Hashem said to Noach, Kates Chabas Balafanai, the end of all flesh has come before me. Kimala haaretz chamas mipneihem, for the land has become filled with chamas. Chamas we translate as thievery, because of them. And behold, I will destroy them from the land. So as we read the words of the pasuk, we see that the end of all flesh is coming because chamas fills the land. Thievery, rampant taking has filled the land, and that has brought the destruction upon the world. The Michtam Eliyahu points out that what the message from the Torah here is that when we become takers to the point that we're ready to steal, then we bring destruction upon ourselves. Now, the Michtam Eliyahu continues with a very interesting comment. And he explains that, in essence, if we were to go ahead and just think about what was life like for Noach and his family on the ark, it was 24/7 chesed, 24/7 kindness, 24/7 of giving. At least two of every creature was on the ark, and they had to be taken care of. Whose responsibility was that? Who took care of them? Noach and his family. The Michtam Eliyahu comments is that we have to see this constant kindness, this constant giving that was happening through Noach and his family as the life source of the ark. In essence, the ark should not have survived the flood. The flood waters were much too powerful for a wooden ark that was sealed inside and outside with pitch to survive. There was something else that was their source of survival. There was something else that was their source of life. And that was the chesed, the kindness, the giving that was going on constantly. That was the life. That was the soul of the ark. Now, there's a famous medrash that says that Noach was once late in bringing the lion its food. And because of that, the lion mauled him. And the question is, here's Noach working so hard to take care of everyone on the ark. He's once late for the lion, and he gets mauled. How do we understand that? Why was he deserving of that? And Michtam Eliyahu explains that if the kindness of the ark is really what keeps the ark alive and everything in the ark alive, that's the true source of life, then any diminishment of kindness is a diminishment of the power of life. Noach was mauled because since he was late and there was a diminishing in the kindness, that means there was a diminishing in the source of life. And therefore, some of his life was taken away. He was injured, not killed, but he was injured. That's a certain set, that's a level of loss of life. Because it wasn't so much a punishment as much as because the ark could only survive due to the kindness, the constant kindness that was being done. If there was any kind of lack of that kindness, a lack of source of life, it had an automatic effect, an automatic reaction, which was, in this case, the mauling of Noach at the hands of the lion. If Noach is late, that means the kindness is not happening. If it's not happening, that means there's a diminishing of life. How did that manifest itself? In the fact that Noach was mauled. But the true source of life, what really kept the ark alive, what was its real neshama, what was its soul? It was the kindness that was being performed. Now, I want to share with you something very interesting that doesn't directly relate to this. However, it relates to it. It also relates to how kindness provides for us. Not that we should do kindness to provide for us. We do kindness because we want to help someone. But there are some very important lessons. There's a very interesting source that lets us know that we should know that kindness provides for us. Kindness can provide for us. So there is a pasuk in the book of Koheles, Ecclesiastes, that reads the following. This is in Perek Aleph, chapter 11, Pasuk Aleph, verse 1. It reads, Shalach lach macha pnei hamayim. Cast your bread upon the waters. For in many days you'll find it, which means you'll throw your bread on the water. It seems to be carried away, but one day it'll come back to you. What does this mean? So Rashi in his comment says, Asei tova v'chesed la'adam, do a kindness and a favor for a person, that your heart is going to say to you about this person, you're never going to see him again. Like a person who throws his food on water. The water's going to carry it away. It's not going to come back. Which means that sometimes there's a person who's going to need a favor from you. And you're going to say to yourself, I'm never going to see this guy again, which means I'll never get anything back from him. Now, I think our immediate reaction is you should never do a kindness with the hopes of getting something back from the person. But it seems to be something that deep down is within us. When Yaakov asked Yosef to marry him in Israel, he asked him to do what is described in the Torah as chesed shalem, as a kindness of truth. And Rashi there comments that the kindness that we do for the deceased is a kindness of truth, because you know he's not going to pay you back. Which means deep down there's something deep down, whether we realize it or not, there's something going on within us that when we do a kindness, there is a thought in the back of our minds that, well, maybe I'll get something back from this person. And that kind of motivates us to help this person. And then there's a certain person you look at and you say, I'm never going to see this guy again. And that may kind of turn us off from doing the kindness. So Keheles tells us, cast your bread upon the water. You're never going to see this guy again. You're never going to get anything back from it. Do it anyway, which is really the way that we should approach any kindness. But it doesn't stop there. Because in many days you'll find it. Their days will come, you shall receive your reward. God is telling us that, again, we don't do the kindness for that purpose. But we should know that the kindness that we do one day will come and pay us back. And Rashi gives us an example. See what the Torah says regarding Jethro, Moshe's father-in-law. We know that when Moshe had to run away from Egypt because he had killed an Egyptian man who was beating a Hebrew slave, Moshe ran to the country of Midian. He came upon a well. The daughters of a man named Yisro came to water their sheep. They were attacked by the other shepherds, and Moshe saved them, and he watered their sheep. They came home to their father. Their father said, that was pretty quick today. How'd you get the job done so fast? And they replied, Ish Mitzri Hitzilanu, an Egyptian man saved us. What did Yisro say? You left him there, call him and give him bread to eat. Let's give him something to eat. So says Rashi, the Sabashu Mitzri. Yisro thought he was an Egyptian man, which he was. But he ran away, they won't see him anymore. Rashi says Yisro had no idea. This was an Egyptian man, was a foreigner. He helped his daughters, and they reciprocated a little bit, give him something to eat, but that's it. Ma'ya Seifai. And what happened at the end? Nasa Chasanai, this Egyptian man that he gave him a meal, became his son-in-law. Umelech al Yisrael, king over the Jewish people. Moshe eventually brought Yisro under the wings of the divine presence. He brought Yisro to convert. And then the descendants of Yisro merited to sit in what's called the Gaz's chamber. That was the chamber at the Beis Hamikdash where the Sanhedrin, the high court, sat. Yisro's descendants eventually became great Torah scholars and were part of the highest court, the Sanhedrin of the Jewish people. And how that all happened? It all happened because he invited Moshe. Did he think he's ever going to see Moshe again? No, he thought it was an Egyptian. But look what happened. It all came back. So Rashi uses Yisro as an illustration to bring out this idea that you do a kindness for a person. In your mind, it's like throwing water on casting your bread on the water. It's not going to come back. It does come back. Sometimes we see it come back, and sometimes we don't see it come back. Now, to me, there's something very interesting in this Rashi. When Rashi says, look what it says by Yisrael. From what I see, Rashi is not quoting some kind of a medrash here. Rashi is he looks at the Chumash, he sees the episode of Yisro with Moshe, and he sees where a man invited someone who he had no idea who he was, never thought he was going to see him again. But look what came about through that kindness. This is the fulfillment of what the verse says, that do a kindness with someone that you don't ever think you're going to get anything back from it, and look what you get back from it. Now, I think some of us might say, well, yeah, clearly he invited Moshe, and Moshe became his son-in-law, and, everything came from that. And of course, Hashem makes shidduchim, Hashem makes matches, and it all came about. It all came together, right? It all came together. Would we necessarily have said that all happened because Yisro did a kindness to Moshe? Is a result of that? Some of us might say, I don't know, maybe yeah, maybe not, but we don't know. We don't know that. We don't know that it came because of the kindness. It came because it came. And it happened to come out through this way. It was because of the kindness. And I think Rashi is telling us that we have permission, at least permission, that to go ahead and look at the entire story, look at all the details of the story, all the context of the story, and make connections. No, it's not just Hashem made it happen that Yisro invites Moshe and he becomes his son-in-law. No, you have to take everything into account. Take into account not just it happened that Moshe landed up by Yisro. How did he land up by Yisro? Because Yisro did a kindness with him. He did a kindness with him that he didn't expect anything to come out from it. And look what came out from it. It's not just, when we see these kinds of things, it's not just, of course, Hashem makes it happen, but we have no right to go ahead and say, and to give explanation, and to say, well, it happened because of this, or it happened because of that. It seems that Rashi looks at the story of Yisro, and he takes all the details and everything that's involved, and he does put it together. And it's not just, of course, Hashem puts it together, but those are his calculations. God's ways are mysterious. We don't know what they are. Many times we don't know what they are. But here is a situation where we look at what happens and we see a number of things coming together. And based on that, we make a conclusion. The conclusion being that it's because of the fact that Yisro did a kindness to Moshe. And he did a kindness that he wasn't even expecting. And look what came out from it. You put that all together and you see that Yisro's kindness brought about all the things that he got from Moshe Rabbeinu. And it all happened with someone that he had no idea that he was going to get anything back from. Why? Because at the end of the day, the kindness will come back to pay you. So I'd like to give an example of this. I'm sure there are many examples of this. This is something that I recently came upon. And I came upon this because I was listening to a shir given by Rabbi Nissen Kaplan of Yerushalayim, and he told the following story, and I did some research on it. And maybe some of you are familiar with this. But at the turn of the 20th century, two of the wealthiest and most famous men in America were a pair of Jewish brothers, German Jewish immigrants, named Nathan and Isidore Strauss. They were the owners of R.H. Macy's department store and founders of the A&S Abraham and Strauss chain. The brothers are multimillionaires and very well known for their philanthropy and social activism. Now, it's not clear to me in which year this happened, because the way I saw online, it says that Nathan Strauss and his brother were actually touring the Mediterranean, it says in 1904. That's how I saw it online. And while touring the Mediterranean, they stopped over in Palestine and expected to be one stop of many. And Nathan wrote, on reaching Jerusalem, we changed our plans. All that we saw in the Holy Land made such a deep impression on us that we gave up the idea of going to other places. Visiting the holy sites of which one hears and reads since childhood, watching the scenes in life as pictured in the Bible was most soul-stirring. From that time on, we felt a strange and intense desire to return to the land. Don't forget, in 1904, Palestine, Israel, they don't look at like anything it looks like now. It was a poor, underdeveloped country. But Nathan and his wife saw something special. It was the land of the Bible. They saw something special there. And they became staunch Zionists, and they became very supportive of the people of Israel. He built soup kitchens for the aged and the blind and the physically defective from 1912 to 1917. Now, what happened from 1904 to 1912, it doesn't say. But he clearly was a great supporter of the needs of people in the land of Israel. Now, the way that Rabbi Kaplan told the story was that when he was once touring one of the soup kitchens that he had helped build, that he had through his money was built, he broke his leg there. He broke his leg in the kitchen. And it's like, here it's the kitchen that he made, and he broke his leg there. While touring the country, breaking your leg, you're visiting a country, you break your leg. Never a pleasant experience. I'm sure 1904 is much more difficult. But that's what happened. Now, in this excerpt from Wikipedia that I'm reading from, it says Strauss broke his leg on a 1912 visit to Palestine. Broke his leg. Doesn't say in a soup kitchen. He broke his leg. Was unable to join his brother Isidore, who was in England at the time, meaning Isidore was with him. And Isidore had already left for England because from England, they were going to sail back to the United States. And the plan was that Nathan was going to travel with him. But Nathan broke his leg. And because he broke his leg, he was delayed. And he missed the boat that his brother Isidore and Isidore's wife had left on. That boat that his brother left on was the Titanic. And his brother and wife perished on the Titanic. He was spared because he came late to England because he broke his leg. He broke his leg in Eretz Yisrael, where he had supported and helped so many people. Because he was there and he broke his leg, his life was saved. And if it happened in the soup kitchen, as the story is told, the point is even stronger. This is a fulfillment of what we just read. That through the kindness that he did for others, it came back to him. He was there in Eretz Yisrael to help, to support. And he helped and he supported. And it was there that he broke his leg, and that delayed him, and that saved his life. The kindness that he gave out to others, which he clearly was never thinking he was going to get anything back from them, it came back to save his life. Chesed, Koheles teaches us, is something that comes back to us, whether we know it, sometimes we'll merit to see it, sometimes we won't. But this is what the Torah promises us. And here again, as we see by the Teva, the chesed that we do is something that gives us life. Okay, next thing I want to share with you is the following. Now we're going to skip to, the part of the Parsha that talks about the flood, and we're going to talk about an episode that took place after the flood. Perek Tes Pasuk Chaf, chapter 9, verse 20. Vayachal Noach ish adama. Noach began to be a man of the earth, a farmer. Vayita Karin planted a vineyard. The rest of the story goes, the grapes of the vineyard grew. He made wine from it. He became intoxicated. He undressed himself. His son Chum pointed out what his father had done to his other brothers. Chum did it in a very disgraceful way to his father. And the two other brothers, Shem and Yefes, respectfully, without looking at their father undressed, covered him up. So Rashi comments on these words by Yochel Noach, which we translate as Noach began to be. But it also has another word in it, which is chol, which means to demean, to be unholy. Vayochel asatz mechulin. Noach, when it says Vayochel Noach shadama, means Noach became a man of the earth. Vayochel, he became chulin. He demeaned himself. He did something not in a he didn't act in a holy way. This becoming a farmer and planting the vineyard was an act of chulin, was an act that was really an act of wasn't an act of holiness. It wasn't an act of high spiritual nature. Starting off for planting a vineyard was not the proper way to go. That was chulin. That was something that was not holy. Basically, grapes are important, but the main point of the grapes are the wine. And as important as wine can be, it's not the first thing that you do when we're trying to rebuild the world. And therefore, by doing so, Noach made himself chulin. He made himself unholy. He showed a certain leaning, a certain connection, a certain desire for physical pleasure. Now, there's a medrash that says like this. On these words, Noach became a man of the earth. And again, following Rashi's idea. So the medrash says, Chaviv Moshe mi Noach. Moshe was more beloved than Noach. Noach Mishnikri Ish Tzadik. Noach starts off being called Ish Tzadik in the beginning of this week's Parsha. Eila told us Noach Ish Tzadik Tamim Haya B'dei Yosef. Noach is called Ish Tzadik, a righteous man. Noach starts off being called Ish Tzadik, a righteous man, and eventually Nikra Ish Adam. He's called a man of the earth, which is not meant to be a compliment. It has a connotation of being earthy, being mundane. Moshe, on the other hand, Mishanikra Ish Mitzri. First, he's called Ish Mitzri. When the word Ish is applied to Moshe, he's called Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man. Not the biggest compliment. Nikra Shalikim. But eventually became called Ish Elikim, man of God. In the last parsha of the Torah, Moshe, Ish Elikim es b'nei Yisrael. This is the blessing that Moshe, the man of God, gave to the Jewish people. He starts out, he's first called Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man, and then he's called Ish Elikim, a man of God. So the Medrash says Moshe is more beloved than Noach, because Noach went from being called a righteous man to a man of the earth, and Moshe went from Egyptian man to man of God. And therefore, Moshe is more beloved. What's the point of this medrash? It's, Moshe clearly, Noach eventually went down and Moshe went up. What's the point of what the medrash is trying to bring out? And why are we calling it chaviv? Moshe is more beloved. How does that description fit to the point being made here? So the Meshech Chacham explains that there are two ways in serving Hashem. There is one way when a person decides to isolate himself from others. All he does is focus on God and serving God, and he doesn't get involved with other people. Then you have a person who gets very involved in communal needs, and actually, because of that, he can actually kind of lose out on that. Well, actually, you have another person. Let me back up. You have that one person who isolates himself and totally focuses on service of God. And then you have another person who actually gives up from himself on behalf of the community. Now, one would assume that the person who just isolates himself and focuses totally on God will come to a higher level of spirituality. He'll come to a higher level. He'll be more beloved by God. And actually, we do find that people who gave of themselves for the community, they actually sometimes lost out on their Torah scholarship. Medrash talks about one sage who forgot a number of a large part of his learning because of the fact that he was so involved in communal needs. It can do that to you, and therefore one might say that the person who just focuses totally on God, that person is going to come out on a higher and going to reach a higher level and be more beloved to God. But what do we find? Noach chose the first way. He isolated himself. He didn't rebuke the people of his generation. There's a lot to discuss about that, but the way that our sages say is Noach did not rebuke the people. And the way that Shachachim is approaching it is that it came more from just kind of isolating himself and not being involved with others. So, it would seem that he should be the one who keeps going upwards. That's not what happened. Noach starts off as an Ish Tzadik, as a righteous person, and at the end, he ends up Ish Adam, a man of the land. He debased himself. Now, Moshe, on the other hand, is called an Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man. Why is he called that? Because he's in exile. Being called an Egyptian man while in exile means that there is it has a certain effect on you spiritually. When a person is in Golos, when a person is in exile, the person is not in where he's meant to be. That has an effect on his spirituality too. Nonetheless, he eventually rises to become Ish Elikim, man of God. Why is that? Because of the fact that he gave up, he put himself on the line to save the Jewish man being beaten by the Egyptian man. He didn't just isolate himself. He got involved with others, and he put his life on it. He put his life on the line for it. And because of that, he eventually came to this great level of being called Ish Elikim, man of God. The point of the Medrash is that we might have thought that Noach will be more beloved to Hashem than Moshe, because Noach was the kind of person who was solely focused on God, while Moshe got involved with others. So it's great to be involved in others, but Noach would rise to a higher spiritual level and be more beloved to God because of that? And the answer is no. Moshe was more beloved because of the fact that Moshe got involved with helping others. Therefore, he was more beloved, and Hashem gave him the ability to rise to a higher level in merit of that. So that's the point of the Medrash. One might think Noach is more beloved. Noach is going to rise to higher spiritual levels because of the fact that he is totally devoted and focused on God. And the answer is no. He actually fell. Moshe was given the blessing by God, was given the divine assist, was given the strength, was given the ability. Hashem gave him the ability to rise to high levels because of the fact that he did give up from himself for others because he helped others. Moshe is more beloved than Noach because he went from a lower level to a higher level. Why? Because of his dedication to others. And that made him more beloved to Hashem than Noach was. Now, I'm going to share with you on the pasuk in V'zayis HaBracha that we mentioned before that Moshe is called there Ish Elikim, man of God. And the pasuk reads, this is Paraklam chapter 33, pasuk Aleph verse 1 in the book of Devarim. V'zayis HaBracha, this is the blessing, Asher berach Moshe Ish Elikim, that Moshe, the man of God, blessed es bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, lifnei Moshe, before his death. So the commentary of Ohr HaChaim focuses on these words, Ish Elikim, man of God. What does that phrase mean exactly? So he has a number of explanations. I'm going to share with you two. The first explanation is not related to our discussion, but a very interesting explanation. He's called Ish Elikim because we know that Moshe had many great qualities. One of them is humility. And one might think that Moshe was already predisposed to humility. He was born that way. He was born with a humble nature. On that, the Torah is telling us you're making a mistake. Moshe's nature was not one of humility. Moshe had to make himself, he had to work on himself to be humble. And what was it that got him to work on himself? The fact that because he feared God, because he lived with God. He lived in God's presence. And it was that connection to God that's what gave him the motivation. That's what brought him to work on himself to develop these qualities. Calling him Ish Elikim means to say Ish, which is a word describes a great person with great qualities. Moshe's qualities were not there by nature. They were there because of his fear of God, his living with God. That is what brought him to work on himself and develop these qualities. Not that he was born with the qualities, not that his nature was predisposed to these qualities, that he developed these qualities because of his fear of God. Then the commentary Ohr HaChaim points out the fact that after it says, this is the blessing that Moshe, man of God, blessed the Jewish people before his death. So the Ohr HaChaim is comments on the phrase Ish Elikim, man of God, and the next words, es bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people. And he says there's a connection between the two. Moshe Rabbeinu became Ish Elikim. Moshe Rabbeinu merited to come to this great level of being called man of God because of Bnei Yisrael, because of his involvement with the Jewish people. By means of how much effort he put into them, he invested in them. And what he had to put up with them. And because of how dedicated and how well he had served the Jewish people and led them, Hisim Madrega Du. That's how we attain this level, the Kari Yisrael came to be called a man of God. How did Moshe merit this level of man of God? Because of his involvement with the Jewish people. Because of how much effort he put into it, how much he tolerated, how dedicated he was in leading them. Because of what he did for the Jewish people, that is what made him Yisrael Kim. That is what gave him the merit that Hashem brought him, of course, through his efforts, but Hashem brought him and raised him up, that he should come to this level of Yisrael Kim. Again, the idea that it's the kindness and how much we invest in others, that's going to be the merit by which we're going to rise in our spiritual heights and be beloved in the eyes of Hashem. Have a wonderful evening.